In this lesson, we'll be talking about hosting a Git repository online. We'll be seeing why it's important to host a Git repository online, and I'll also be showing you how you can do that. So far in this course, we have been working on this project, which we call Git course, and this project has a couple of files here, and depending on the project that you're working on, you might have even more files than I do here. But one thing with this project or with this repository is that it is hosted on my device, on my laptop, and there are a few problems associated with that. For example, if I should delete this .git directory, then it means I have lost the repository for my project. I have lost all the history that has been recorded for my project. Or maybe I don't delete this directory, but maybe I deleted this Git course project itself. Same thing, I have lost this .git directory, I have lost all my files, and I would not be able to get them again. I would have to build from scratch. Or let's say my laptop crashes, for example, it doesn't come up, or it is stolen, something bad happens. That also means that I have lost access to this repository, I have lost access to the files in my project. Another scenario could be, what if I wanted to continue building this project on another laptop? That means I would have to send this repository from this laptop to the other laptop. Basically, this repository is hosted on this laptop. So if I need to access it from another laptop, or if anything happens to this laptop, I have lost my project, I have lost all the versions of the project I have created, I have lost the history of this project. And this is where hosting your repository online can be helpful. For example, if you are working in a company is trying to build a project, and multiple people are contributing to this project from different laptops. In that sense, it wouldn't make sense to host the project on one person's laptop. Instead, you will host the project on an online platform, and then everybody working in that company, working on that project, can download the project from the online platform, and then when they make changes, they can upload their changes back to that online platform. Even for me, I host almost all my projects online, so that way I can easily work on my projects from different laptops, and if anything should happen to my laptop, my project is saved online. I can get another laptop and download that project from online. So the question now is, how do you host a Git repository? Now, before I show you how, I want us to quickly look at this diagram. So like I said, you host the repository online like this, and then there is one device. This could be my first laptop. With this laptop, I can download this repository to my laptop. So on my laptop, I'll be able to access the repository, which means the history of the project. I can access the history of the project online, but then I can also access the history of the project on my laptop. And when I also make changes to the project, I can push those changes back online where I hosted it. And if I need to access it from another laptop, well, I can have another device here. This could be my device, or it could be somebody else's device. They can also download the repository. Of course, depending on permissions, you could configure your permissions that only you should be able to download your project, but you can also give other people permissions. So if you give this device permission or this user permission, they can also download the repository on their device, and when they make changes, then they can push that change back online for every other person. For example, if you're working in a company, you have projects hosted online, and then everybody working in that company has permissions, so they can always pull changes or push changes, which means download changes or upload changes. Now, what are the platforms on which you can host your repositories? Now, there are a couple of them. One of the most popular ones is GitHub. You have probably heard about GitHub before. So there is GitHub, there is Bitbucket, there is GitLab. Now, all of these platforms, they have different features and they have slight differences in some cases. Mostly, they are doing the same thing, allowing you host your Git repositories, but they also provide other features like security, pull requests, AI, and a bunch of other things. But as we progress in this course, I'll be working mostly with GitHub, but I just want to remind you again that whatever I'm showing you here with GitHub, you can apply the same concept with other Git hosting platforms. So for example, I have an account here on GitHub, and you can see I host many repositories here. I have over 100 repositories here. I have a repository for my React course. So I'm currently working on a React course, and the project that we're building in that course, I also host it here on GitHub. So this way, if anything should happen to my laptop, I have it online. I don't need to worry. Even my website, dillionmegida.com, the code and the images and everything I use for that website is here on GitHub. Same thing for this simplereact.dev, which is the website for my React course, simplegit.dev, deeecode.com. So let's say this project we have been working on so far, Git course, let's say we want to host it on GitHub. How do we do that? Now, the first thing you have to do is to create an account on GitHub or any other hosting provider that you're using. So you can come to sign up, follow the instructions, enter your email, enter your password, set a couple of things. I already have an account with GitHub, so I don't need to do that. Now, once you have an account, you can come here to this new, and this is where you create a new repository. Now, there are a couple of things here. Don't worry so much about them, but one thing you want to give your repository is a name. So I'm going to give the name of this repository Git course. We already have a Git course repository. Okay, let me just call this Git course demo. This is going to be the repository name. You can enter a description if you want. You can choose if you want this repository public or private. If it is private, then only you can see this repository when you go to your GitHub account. But if it is public, anybody that goes to your GitHub account can see this repository. We will talk about README file later on. We'll talk about .gitignore later on. We'll also talk about licenses later on. So create repository. Now, this repository is created on GitHub, but it is currently empty. And so GitHub gives us some instructions on how we can push our changes to this repository. Now, we're going to be using a couple of commands to see how to push our project to GitHub. Don't worry, some of these commands don't make sense. We'll still have lessons where we dive deeper into these commands. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come to HTTPS. Don't worry about SSH for now. Then I'm going to copy this URL here. Now, when I copy it, I'm now going to come back to my terminal, or if you're using the terminal in VS Code, that also works. And here I'm going to do git remote add origin, and then I paste the URL. So this remote command allows you to create connections with other repositories. And here I want to create a connection between this repository and this online repository, which is the one on GitHub. So you have git remote, and add origin is just like saying I want to add a new connection, and then you give that connection, or you can think of it like a link. So what is going to be the name of that link? A name you'd find often is origin, but I can also come here, call this link Deeecode. I can also call it this. You can call it demo. You can call the link anything, but like I said, often you'd find this called origin. So git remote, add a new connection. The name of that connection is going to be origin, and then that connection is going to be to this URL. Press that. We have added a connection, and now if I should do git remote V, which shows all the remote connections, you can see that we have this origin connection with this URL, and we can fetch, and we have origin connection, this URL, and we can push. You can think of push as upload, and you can think of fetch as download. So now that we have this connection, we can now do git push. This push command allows us to push the changes or the history recorded in this git directory. It allows us to push it to another repository. So here I can say git push, and then I'm going to say I want to push it to the origin connection. If I had named that connection demo, this is going to be git push demo. If I had named it Deeecode, it's going to be git push Deeecode. But here I'm going to do git push origin. But that is not all. I also have to specify what branch I want to push this repository to. Now, we haven't looked at branches yet in this course, so don't worry if branches doesn't make sense. But one thing you can keep in mind is, look at this main here. You probably won't see this in your terminal, but this is the default branch when I created the Git repository. So I can then say that I want to push these changes to the main branch of the origin repository. So I'm going to say git push origin main. And when I do that, this has now uploaded all of this Git history, Git information to the online repository. If I should come here and I do git push origin main, what you see now is everything up to date. So if I should add a new commit now, I can do git push origin main again to push the new changes. Now, if I should come back here to GitHub, if I should refresh this page, what you see is we now have our repository hosted here on GitHub. And if we should go to the commits, you would see all the commits that we have made so far. Add initial files, add ABC feature. These are the commits that we have made so far. I can go back, and these are all the files in our project. The test Java file, let me open it side by side so you see. So if I open test.java, you see we have this here, you see we have this here. If I open api.py and I open api.py here, you see we have api.py, a new feature, another new feature, remove a feature, and we have those same things here. So with GitHub, we can go through our files, we can go through the history, we can see who added this change, when was this change added. You can find all of this information here. But the beauty of all of this is that now if I should delete this Git directory from here, or if my laptop crashes or has a problem, I can always come back here to GitHub and download my project and make changes. Now in our code so far, if I should run git status, you see that we have one modified file which we haven't attended to, which is script.js. So let's just create a new commit. I'm just going to say git add script.js, git commits. What is going to be my message? Let's just say fix random bug. Let's just assume this is what we did. You want to use a meaningful message depending on what you actually did, but in our case we didn't really do anything special, so let me just keep it like this. So fix random bug, and now that I have this, if I do git status, you see we have nothing to commit. Now I can do git push origin main again, and now this is going to push this to the origin. Remember, origin is the GitHub repository here, and now we had 7 commits, right? If I should refresh, now we have 8 commits. Fix random bug. Who is the author? I am the author. And now we have this, and if you come here, this is our branch. So currently we have just one branch, and this is the main branch, which is the main branch that we also had locally. And in future lessons we'll learn more about branches, but I hope with this project you get to understand why it is important to host your Git project online, and also how you can do that. Now let's say you have your Git project online here, but then you want to download it to your device. Maybe you deleted the project, or you want to download it on another device. How do you do that? I'm going to show you how to do that in the next lesson.